So I don't know whether I should go back and start talking again, but let me introduce ourselves. I have the pleasure of co-chairing the D&I events with Professor Vana Kalgouraki of Athens University of Economics and Business. My name is Panos Chrysanthis. I'm coming from the University of Pittsburgh. And both of us, we have been involved in this wonderful initiative of our database community that aims to build a more inclusive, more diverse community that will support diversity and the culture of acceptance, which means that this will encourage the retention and attraction of talents. Nothing should be left behind. Promote diversity of thoughts as well as perspective. Help make the scientific community more flexible and responsive in terms of changes that we are living at this time around the world, and also discourage discriminatory behavior that will go back and reduce the attraction of talents and give the potential to any of our colleagues to exhibit their creativity and potential. And the question was, how do we achieve that? And this is exactly the aim of the initiative. We wanted to come together as a community around this important topic of diversity and inclusion. And we want to get together to have a concerted effort that goes beyond a single conference. In fact, at this point, the initiative is also outlook to other conferences in other subfields of computing and information. And also we would like to provide a platform to enable our members to voice their concerns, needs, and ideas to do better than what we have been doing so far. So in this respect, the D&I action is have a different thrusts. We have the coordination across different events, members, conference, and so on, reach out that we're collecting data in order to learn the experience of our community. There is include this in charge of monitoring and recommending all inclusion efforts, organize to these actions in charge in conference organization such as code of conduct that prevent this discriminatory behavior, inform and educate the community about the importance of diversity and inclusion, provide support, and also, as already alluded to, have this scout that we try to see how we reach other communities and learn from the other communities to advocate and learn about the D&I efforts. So what is the plan is to involve all of you in this activity. So please visit the URL to see more information and also participate, volunteer to different actions that I just mentioned. Also, we would like to communicate our learnings about this year's initiatives and suggestions how to proceed. And part of that is actually the purpose of the questionnaire, the anonymous questionnaire about how well we're doing and how we should proceed with respect to the court-centered D&I actions. Here is the responses from 2021. As you can see, MDM was actually in the first place with respect to responses. This year, unfortunately, we're not doing that well. Out of the 247 participants, we got only 53. I strongly encourage everyone to go and visit the web questionnaire, which is available from VGate, to fill out these questions. And this brings me to a summary of what we're doing this semester. Of course, I'm academicians and I always influence in this conference, the two events. We have the two surveys, the pre-conference that I just mentioned and the post-conference. We have the D&I workshop that is going to start in a few minutes. Then we have D&I keynote talk tomorrow at 20:45 or 8:45 Eastern European time or Cyprus time. And then we have also the activity of the Best D&I Presentation Award at the PhD Forum that will be announced tomorrow. This brings me to just to give the specifics of the workshop. The workshop will be given by Falaah Khan, who is a PhD student at New York University. And she will talk about the demystifying AI comics as a medium of scientific dissemination. And the keynote talk will be by Professor Dr. Genevieve Vargas-Solar, and she will talk about analyzing crowd mobility from decolonization and inclusive perspectives. With this, I will call everyone again in action. Let's build a D&I community. I will be happy to answer any questions or get your thoughts now or later on. Vanna and I, we are always available to get your suggestions, concerns, and so on. I will thank you here, and I will stop for a moment if you have any thoughts or questions to share before passing this to Vanna to make the introduction to the workshop.
So I guess without further ado, let me introduce, so it's my great pleasure to introduce Falaah Khan, who is a PhD student at the Center of Data Science at New York University. Falaah is working on the issues of fairness and robustness of algorithmic systems. So what I find very intriguing about Falaah's work is that she's bringing together her two passions, the engineer and the artist. So Falaah creates scientific comic books, and the goal is to disseminate her research in a way that is more accessible and more approachable to the broad public. She runs the Data, Responsibility and We Are AI comic series with Professor Julia Stoyanovich at the NYU Centers for Responsible AI, and the Superheroes of Deep Learning comic series with Professor Zack Lipton at CMU. Falaah holds a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication engineering from Shiv Nadar University of India, and also has important industry experience in building machine learning models for access management and security at Dell. So Falaah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that invite, for that introduction. Can you stop sharing? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Can you see my screen? 1 second.
So can you try once more? Okay.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Okay. Yeah,
awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna move the Zoom bar. Yeah, okay. So hello everyone. The workshop today is called Demystifying AI Comics as a Medium of Scientific Dissemination. I think Vanna introduced me much better than I can introduce myself, so I'll just jump into it. So the agenda for today is threefold. So we'll start with a short 15-minute presentation where I'll share our ongoing work on creating scientific comic books. We'll pick up examples from our work to motivate why we believe comic books and art more broadly is a novel medium of scholarship, both for disseminating research among the scientific community and for educating the public more broadly. And then we'll do a hands-on activity that aims to equip you, the participants, with these same creative tools such that you can embark on these creative explorations yourself. So you can also disseminate your research in an accessible, inclusive way. So we start with the Data Responsibly comic series. This is a series that I work on with Julia at NYU. The series is targeted at data science enthusiasts, students, and practitioners. So volume 1, the cover that I'm showing on the screen right now, deals with questions such as what AI work are we funding? Who are we building these models for? What problems are we choosing to solve? And we use these motivating questions to dive into issues of digital accessibility and the impact of poorly designed systems on marginalized demographic groups. We tie together these insights with broader issues in machine learning, such as problems in operationalizing fairness in technical systems, misguided incentive structures in scholarship, exclusionary discourse, and questions of culpability. We've got incredible response from the scientific community on this. So on the right side, you can see that the comic has been translated into multiple languages, and this has all been crowdsourced. So people reach out saying they would like to translate it into their native language so that other people can read it. So we've had Spanish, we've had French, we've had Portuguese. We were getting like a Greek translation as well. So this has all been community driven, and it's nice to see that people also want this kind of creative, inclusive work. Volume 2 is called Fairness and Friends, and it was developed in collaboration with Dr. Eleni Manis, who is a political philosopher. And so Volume 2 is our attempt to bridge fairness ideas from different disciplines, notably between computer science and political philosophy. And so the idea is to explain and critically evaluate different definitions or different doctrines of fairness, contrasting their conception in these two disciplines, so that we get some normative guidance as to which notion of fairness is applicable in which context. So far, the Data Responsibly comic series is about educating data scientists. In addition to this, we've also been developing educational materials and methodologies to teach members of the public about responsible AI in the scope of what we call our Responsible AI, our VR AI effort. And the idea essentially is this, that although this technology is what we're building, it affects more than just us. And so it's not enough for the scientific community to understand what this technology is. The general public also needs to have some amount of agency and have some amount of understanding of what these technologies do. And so what you're seeing on your screen right now is a comic series that supplements a free public education course that we developed. This course is called VR AI. It runs at the Queen's Public Library in New York City, and it was developed in collaboration with the Queen's Public Library and Peer-to-Peer University, which is a public education nonprofit. All the materials are open source, free, available online. And notably for this session, we also created a comic series to accompany the course. So this is the teaching material for the course. The first 3 volumes you're seeing on your screen right now. The course and the comics use everyday imagery and lay-friendly language to offer a primer on topics ranging from algorithms and what AI is and how machine learning systems make predictions, to a fairly more technical subject of classifiers and how to design them, to ethics in AI and questions about trolley problems, utilitarianism, ethical normative questions, as well as real-world applications such as racism and gender bias in decision-making in hiring, in online ad delivery, and other historic applications of AI that we've seen. This year, notably, we also conducted a series of roundtable discussions as part of an all-aboard project. So this connected us at the center with accessibility experts across the world. And so we used this comic series as a case study as a case study for accessible public education. And we got a bunch of insights in terms of digital accessibility for people who are blind, deaf, dumb, who read comics through screen readers. We also got a lot of feedback on language accessibility, on how to write for the general public. We also got a bunch of insights on visual accessibility, the amount of information that people can sort of process in one given panel or one given page. And we're looking forward to incorporating these insights back. So it's not just to make comic books as an inclusive medium, but also to make inclusive comic books. So we're sort of doing like a meta layer on top of that. By now, you might be asking yourself, why comic books? Is it just because we like reading comic books? We've thought a lot about this over the last couple of years, and we have some answers for you. So firstly, we think cartoons and visual humor are a rich medium of scientific communication. They're particularly effective in disseminating complex ideas in ways that are accessible to the broad audience. So what you see on your screen right now is a snippet from Fairness and Friends. And here we're using the metaphor of baking to explain the different types of biases in algorithmic systems. So on your left side, you see a depiction of pre-existing bias or bias in the data, which can be visualized as the effect of using store-bought pre-mixed batter. So all of the biases come pre-mixed, and the effect of using pre-mixed batter will affect the taste of your cupcakes. Similarly, on the right side, you see technical bias, which can be understood as the imperfections that seep into baking due to the limitations of the equipment in your kitchen. So here we're showing you miscalibrated oven temperatures, which is a technical limitation of your kitchen, can result in cupcakes that are risen on one side and flattened on the other, or burnt on the other side. And similarly, if you only have baking tins of a certain size, then your batter will probably overflow. And the idea is to use these relatable visual metaphors to make it easy for any reader to grasp the nuances of this big, scary scientific topic, which in this case is algorithmic bias. Here's another example, and this is similar to what we'd like to brainstorm in the second part of this session. To explain bias in data or pre-existing bias, we like to invoke the mirror reflection metaphor. So we say that data is a mirror reflection of the world. And then when thinking about bias, we're interrogating this reflection. We explain that the reflection may be distorted due to oversampling or undersampling, or for more subtle reasons. But importantly, a reflection, which is the data, cannot know whether it's distorted or for what reason. It's for people who have to make this explicit statement. A second point here is that it's not up to data or algorithms, but rather up to people, individuals and society at large, to come to a consensus about whether the world is how it should be, or if it needs to be improved. And if so, how do we go about improving it? A final and important point here is that changing the reflection may not change the world. So if the reflection or the data itself is used to make important decisions, for example, whom to hire or what salary to offer someone, it might be worthwhile to compensate for the distortions, which is apply bias mitigation techniques. However, the mirror metaphor only takes us so far. We have to work much harder, usually going beyond purely technical solutions to make lasting change in the world and not just merely brushing up the reflection, which is what you see on the right side of your screen. We actually went through a couple of iterations of this metaphor, and this is a previous version of the visuals for the same argument. And even before that, this is the slide that Julia used to use to explain this concept. And so the idea really here is to show you how much more clear concepts get when you can make them accessible using a simple metaphor like the mirror and using simple graphics like the ones I showed. We've also been using comic books to explain AI and AI ethics as part of public education effort. And this is an excerpt from the We Are AI comic series. Here we're explaining classification using the case study of designing a smart light. And so on the bottom right, you see we make the reader think about feature selection. So what is a relevant feature in this context? Is it your bedtime? Probably. Is it the price of tea in China? Probably not. Is it the temperature or the weather outside? Maybe, maybe not. And so the idea is to pick these accessible real world examples and enable the user to think about these technical concepts like feature selection, model selection, stuff like that. While targeting the scientific community, we've also found that comic books are particularly prescient medium for literature reviews and critical surveys. And most importantly, for interdisciplinary work that attempts to bridge insights from different disciplines. So the page that's on your screen right now is from Fairness and Friends. And the material of this comic book was actually a tutorial at the ACM FACT conference in 2020. And so the idea here is that philosophy is jargon laden and so is computer science. So we need a simple intermediate language. And to us, that was art. And so on your right side, we constructed this equality of opportunity empire. So for each doctrine of equality of opportunity, we created this settlement, and we gave individual mascots, individual mottos, monuments for each village. And so the idea is that if you can explain these broad normative concepts in a simple way, and you can explain the statistical measures that encode them in a simple way, then we now have a new language in which to bridge these insights. And to us, we are excited to do interdisciplinary work, and we think comic books are a natural way to think in that form. Lastly, we also think comic books enable us to impart satire and humor into our discourse. And this enables us to present critiques of problematic trends in our current landscape in a way that is still light and fun. So on your screen, you're seeing the first page of Fairness and Friends. And this is a satirical take on a lot of sort of mantras that people put out for designing fair systems. On your left, you're seeing a panel from Volume 1, Mirror Mirror, which sort of depicts the way discourse currently happens on Twitter, where simple tweets turn into deep blows and personal attacks. And so the idea is that it's essential for us to move forward productively beyond celebrity culture, misplaced incentives for scholarship, and the harmful extremes of techno-optimism and techno-bashing. And comic books, which are light and fun, give us a way to do this. Lastly, the comic book is also a particularly inclusive medium of scholarship because it levels the playing field across different disciplines and it emphasizes creative expression. It questions existing assumptions of what technical scholarship or computer science education looks like. And this is important because the demarcation between societal and ethical aspects of technology and the technical computer science concerns is entirely artificial. And also because some of the most important work being done in this space is by scholars from underrepresented and historically marginalized groups. And if we are to invite these diverse voices to the conversation, and we believe we desperately need to, then we must be accepting of diverse communication styles and methodologies. And in what we found in our work is that art is one inclusive, diverse way to do this. That's the end of the first part of the workshop, which is the presentation. None of this work would have been possible without my advisor, Julia, and that's why she's standing with the unicorn right there. I can take questions before we move on to the hands-on part. Are there any questions?
So let's see. Are there any questions from the audience? Not at this point. So why don't we move on to the second part, to the hands-on part? Is there something we need to prepare for the hands-on part? How do you have time for organizing that? Okay, let us know.
Yeah, so I'll just continue sharing my screen for that. So essentially what I've done now is I've created a Jamboard. So I've picked up individual panels from our comic books and put them on a slide. And the idea is either we pick up a question that's been on our minds, something related to technology, data, AI, or I have pre-made questions, and we'll use those panels, we'll look at them, interpret them, see what we're seeing. And the beauty of these workshops usually is I drew them, so I know what I wanted them to depict, but when you see it, you see something else, right? So the fun would be that you look at them and let's see what it tells you, and then we'll construct like a narrative with them.
All right.
And there are blank slides if people want to make their own simultaneously, but we can also just make them together because I think we're a small group. So I'll just let me stop sharing this and start sharing that. I'll also put the link in the chat so that people can open it on their desktop if they want to. So this is the link.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, yes. Okay.
Awesome. Okay. So I have a couple of questions, but I would want to start with, and maybe at this point, whoever's in the room, it'll be nice to just like turn your camera on, be like active because it's supposed to be hands-on if you're comfortable with that. And then we can just brainstorm together. So these are a bunch of visuals. We can pick a slide that we like. I'll just walk you through the slides and then we can just pick one. Yes, there are 4. Maybe let's just stick with the first one because there's no question there. So anybody in the room that's brave enough to volunteer a question, any question that's been on your mind regarding AI, data, impact on society, stuff like that, questions like that. Because if you take a question that's not like this, then the visuals might not cater to that question. So it'd be nice to be in this realm. Anybody with any suggestions?
So is there anybody with a question? Does anybody want to start? It has to do with AI, right? And so if nobody has a question, I can start. So one thing that comes to my mind is that, which is obvious to people that are not working on the AI specific field, is are there specific areas or what are the different areas where AI can be particularly useful?
Right.
Or you can revise the question in a way that you think is more appropriate for the for the narrative we're creating, but so something along these lines.
I like it. I like it. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of these, and a lot of the reaction is audience driven. So some of them are very skeptical where they want to discuss harms. But I like that we're being positive today. So we want to find like applications that can be useful. I like that. So let's go with that. So then any visual on the screen or any other on any of the other slides that's speaking out to you. So we can just pick one, I'll make it big, and then we can interpret what you see and how that visual answers this question. So the question we're now answering is, what are the different areas in which AI can be particularly useful? And are there any visuals that are popping out to you?
Oh, there's several, right? So
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Pano, go ahead.
No, the first one that comes in mind is the first left, the top left.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just make it big. Okay, and what do you see?
So I see people be happy, celebrating because they were treated fairly, or they were given transparent information from the, monitor God or whatever, your system or whatever that you can interpret the robot there.
I like that. So, Panos, to you, is the sprinkling the fact that they're being given information and that's why they're happy? You said...
yeah. So basically, we have always the fear of the big brother, or that always will provide you wrong information or violate your privacy or all these kind of things. And now you will see that actually you have a benign big brother that helps you to find your way and make you happy, feel comfortable, and so on.
I like it. I like that. I like that we're subverting the image of the big brother. So now this is a good big brother. Awesome. Does anybody want to add to that? On this visual or any other visual? I know I messed it up a little bit right now, but
it's okay, don't worry.
Can I venture a comment as well?
Sure, sure.
It's about the image of the system, I suppose, standing in front of a mirror.
This one? Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seeing different images, which I assume is what the system inputted for the image to be sent back. That's my thought about that.
Interesting. So you're saying what the system is seeing in the mirror are the inputs that the system has been given.
Yes.
Awesome. And does it help answer the question at all? So is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it neutral? Like, how do you interpret the image?
It means that what originally goes into the system is what comes out of it. So if the system is prejudiced, then prejudice is what the system is going to show back. So it needs to be, I'm not sure if it can be completely independent, because otherwise there won't be any original feedback.
Interesting, very interesting. Thank you. I really like that. So I think you're actually nailing what I tried to draw. So this image is actually the cover of a volume called All About That Bias. And it's exactly that. It's the fact that our systems are a reflection of us. And if in the image, if you zoom in, you can see that certain demographics have like tape around their mouth and certain demographics are speaking. And so that's what it is. Like if certain demographics are marginalized in society, that's what the data is going to also represent, because that's where it was collected from, right? So I think you nailed it. Thank you for that. And anybody else? Yeah, you don't. Yeah, just unmute and speak. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can I speak?
Yeah.
I would go for the middle one on the right with the angel and the evil, and I would say about the privacy of data,
Right.
because AI sometimes can deliver, you know, positive feedback for some people, but also could be harmful for others as well, or for the same people.
Interesting. Do you want to unpack that a little bit more? So, so to push back a little bit on what you said, okay?
Yeah.
So the human and the devil are the human beings here. The robot is the same, right? And so you're saying the system affects people and turns them into like positive or negative, or like I feel like if like that should have been a human being and then like a positive bot and then like a negative bot, right? It's like I'm
Yeah,
trying to see what
exactly.
you're saying. Yeah. Just like unpack your thought a little bit more. So tell me more about what you were thinking.
I mean, I would say it's what is good for somebody. For example, for me, is not basically is not also the same for some others as well. For me, for example, I can be tolerable to disclose my data, to be. I mean, privacy preferences are subjective. For example, other
Right.
users may want to share data, others not. So the AI can generate data for some others, despite the fact that they do not want.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so maybe to tie it back to Vana's original question, maybe this is a good thing, right? So for example, like privacy preserving synthetic data generation, we maybe didn't have technology to do that 10 years ago, right? And now we do. So maybe this is a way that we can contribute, where, like you said, if somebody is more comfortable with their data being released, that's great. But for people who aren't, then we actually have technology to generate privacy preserving data. And that's a positive, that's a net positive from AI. So yeah. And like anytime we can spin privacy to a positive, I think it's a good thing, because we're doing so badly on that front right now.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Awesome, thank you. Any other thoughts? Anybody else? Also, if anybody has like a punchline to tie together images, we can also do that. It's just an open creative playground. We can create whatever we want to create.
So again, this, if you want to link it, it's if you go to prejudice in, prejudice out, actually what we need is prejudice in, and the system will identify and filter it out. So it's prejudice in, filter out, or remove, filter it out, which means remove biases and treat fairly everybody. So maybe this is exactly, so the left is the prejudice in, but what comes out on the right is the angel, which is bias removed, and more truthfulness comes out. Interesting. I think that's very interesting. And I think that ties into Dimitrios, I think his point about now what might be biased to you might not be biased to me. Like if like one of the biggest problems is that powerful demographics who build these systems don't see that as bias, right? Because it doesn't affect them. And so then it kind of links all three images now, where like we see bias in, bias out, and we want to filter it out, but now who decides what is bias and how, like what amount of bias needs to be filtered out? And at what point does filtering bias lead to like positive discrimination, where now you're unfairly benefiting certain demographics? Yeah. I think we have a visual for that too. So this is like Julia and my favorite visual, this one, which is, it's supposed to be grounding technology in people. And so it's like a technology tree. And so there are people pulling its roots. I'll make it bigger.
There are people pulling at the roots and sort of like grounding the tree down essentially. And so maybe that could be the link where we know prejudice in, prejudice out. We know systems reflect what's been given to them. And we also know that different people have different perceptions of good and bad. And so who decides? Everybody has to decide. So we need everybody's involvement. And that's sort of like a punchline for D&I as well, where like we need more diverse voices, we need inclusive voices, because these decisions can't be made by one group, right? So, yeah. Any other visuals on this page that are standing out? I mean, also like if there's a visual that's just like wrong, you can also point that out. It's always nice to get like perspective and feedback. So.
What about the picture on the top right? What does it show? I cannot see it very well.
This one?
Yeah, this one. Is it
the trolley, the pink one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one is on a volume that deals with the trolley problem. And so the idea here is that usually you look at the trolley problem as one trolley problem, where you need to either move the trolley up or down. But if you look at the way like all of technology is built, it's like an interconnected trolley problem, where one trolley hits the other trolley and so on. And in the original volume, there's a page at the bottom with question marks, where sometimes you don't even know if there's somebody on the track, how many people are on the track, are they old, are they young, right? And so uncertainty in the trolley problem. And so the whole volume is about how the trolley problem is like a can of worms, where it's a very simplistic view of ethics, where like there's just this person here and this person there, and there's like one lever. But more often than not, technology is not one trolley. It's like an interconnected network of trolleys. That's what it's supposed to be.
Actually, go ahead, Pano.
No, it's interesting because when I look at this, of course, I come from a little bit biased because during the Elias conference, we presented a paper about thinking inclusively in Caprio, which is a recommendation system. And what I saw this is exactly how do you recommend paths, which actually you have to be context aware and inclusive by thinking that, because I was seeing these people, not thinking that people are disabled, but it's the environment that makes them disabled, or because it imposes barriers. And I was looking at this as barriers that you need to come into consideration when you are thinking and interacting with people. Think that inclusive benefit us all, because given the circumstances, situation, you might find yourself incapable. You don't have the ability to move around. For example, I'm carrying a heavy object. Usually I use the stairs because I want to get thinner, but that when I carry a heavy object, I have to use the elevator. So in that case, it's not because I'm a handicap or have other problems, but this might be the situation that, so this is exactly what I thought when I was looking at that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's also something that we're seeing a lot. And also maybe I can link to where these visuals are. Please feel free to use them in your presentations. They're all open source, because like one visual can say so many things. And that's also why the art form is so rich, because like Panos, everything that you said could have been why I drew it. Like it literally looks like exactly what you said, but it wasn't. So it makes so much sense that visuals translate across context. I love what you said. We actually have like a whole deck on disability if you want to switch there. So this one's about like intersectionality, where you're like doubly, not disabled, but you're doubly disadvantaged. Then we also have one on like disability in terms of self-driving cars and how they don't identify wheelchair riders, because they usually move they usually move backwards, wheelchair drivers, and so the AI would detect them as moving forwards and move towards where they were going to move. And similarly, we also have facial recognition for people who are blind or who have like visual disability, because their eyes move differently. And so how do facial recognition systems detect them? They'd probably detect them as doing something abnormal or doing something harmful or doing something that's like threatening. So we have like a bunch of slides there too. If you want to jump to this, I feel like I mean this slide's got a little crowded, so maybe let's just switch to another slide. Yeah, so maybe let's stay here for a bit, or let's stay here. Let's stay on this one. Anybody else has any images, punchlines, ideas.
So why don't we pick up the top left again?
Okay.
Which looks like indoctrination, or from one hand that indoctrination in a bad sense. On the other hand, is can be thought that through education and open-minded, then better collaboration and understanding, this culture of understanding and reacting in a timely fashion or to prevent harm. That will be great. It's great.
Interesting. Ooh. Wait, can you unpack that a little bit more? So why does it look like indoctrination to you? Because they're affecting the mind?
That's correct, because these two people are trying to look into your brain cells and try to modify them in some sense. So this is, and they go to fine granularity through the lens to see exactly what neurons to reroute or whatever to change behavior. So changing behavior is indoctrination. And if you change it in the bad way, actually bad way is indoctrination. If you educate, change it with a positive way, it means you have a good outcome. So that is the way that I was thinking, and how this is do that social media or Twitter or whatever, that can be both, or other biases, fake news, which comes out of the laptop, because that is exactly I think the input to this way of affecting your brain thoughts and models.
I love it. Awesome. Wow, you guys are you're picking up so many nuances of the images. I love it. This is awesome. Anybody else wants to say anything, add perspective, pick a different image? If you also think two images naturally go together, or two images contrast each other, we can put them next to each other, stuff like that.
Actually, there is a question posted on the chat by Genoveva, who she cannot use her mic right now, but what she's saying is the following, which is very interesting. She says that with images, the thing is that we all have a background imaginary feed by culture and environmental experience. So how could algorithms be aware of this initial background to process and interpret content? That's her question. So this very nicely fit, I think, in a couple of, in what Panos said earlier, and also in the image that shows the tree embedded in the. Oh, okay. So
which one?
No. I was talking about not the tree. The picture with the two faces that shows the network in between the faces. Yeah, this one, that one.
Okay. Because
so basically, as I understand it, everybody has some knowledge based on experience, background, and so on. And I think this is Genoveva's point. And basically, before we start processing all the information, the algorithms should be aware of this initial background when they start to interpret content. That's what Genoveva's point is.
I love it.
Yeah.
So this is actually Julia's punchline for why she loves comic books, which is what distinguishes human beings from robots: humor. That robots don't have a sense of humor, but you never know. We might actually in a couple of years maybe. Yeah, that might actually be interesting to see how to imbibe humor into algorithms, or to imbibe these contextual cultural awareness into algorithms. I love that point. Thanks, Genevieve. That's like great. And I also think it links because Panos's point about indoctrination versus education, like if A is consent, B if you're coming from like a common space of like culture, a common space of lived experience, then it's not indoctrination, it's more education, it's more collaboration because you're also learning from each other. And so that could be like a link between the two visuals. I love how differently we've interpreted this visual, because this visual is literally just supposed to be, like I said, facial recognition on people with visual disability, but now we're looking at it as like, how do algorithms infer context or infer culture? Awesome. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I may have something to add.
Yes, go ahead.
It's the image at the right bottom corner.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
It appears to be a system which has been taught to avoid physical objects, other cars in the street, and perhaps a self-driving car, but it doesn't seem to recognize the cyclist. So perhaps it's an indication of directions or input, which misses the most important point. The car needs to avoid pedestrians and cyclists as much as it needs to avoid, even more than it needs to avoid other cars and trees.
I love that point. And I didn't note this while drawing it. So I just drew like segments that it recognized and segments that it didn't recognize, but you very correctly pointed out that it misses the most important thing, which is the human life that you're trying to not harm. I love that point.
Of course, this does not refer to the accident in Arizona, right?
There's that disclaimer, no? All similarities to real people.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I coincidental. No intention or benefit.
We have to do a lot of those. Like we have to give a lot of disclaimers because we have a lot of panels of like prominent people in the comics, and just be like, it's incidental. It's not supposed to represent them. I think we have like coming towards the end. Panos, you were saying something?
No, I would like to point out that what Nicolas just said, system missing the most important point, the humans, the way that you summarize it, I think is a great punchline, because again, what is our whole goal here with diversity and inclusion is to put back the human in the center, all the humans in the center, without any qualifications or constraints or anything. Just pay attention to the human.
I love that. Yeah. So I think we're nearing the end. So I wanted like 5 minutes just to like come back and then I won't speak. I want like people who were part of the session to speak, to just talk about the idea. Essentially, maybe I'll even stop sharing so it feels more informal. The idea essentially is to just broaden what we think of as our job. Like it's not just our job to do this work, but it's also our job to be able to communicate this work to people and to invite more people to be able to do this work. And so it's, I mean, hopefully the point of the session also is you don't have to draw to make comics. Like you need to think in visuals, right? So all of the thoughts that you guys gave, I'm sure like with DALL-E, you don't even have to draw anymore, right? You just need to be able to construct these narratives, and that's basically the point of the session. And so maybe we'll go across the room and everybody can just like pick up one thing that they feel like they can take back. Like, and I'm not saying you have to do it, but it's also very amenable, right? Because these are questions that we think about. These are questions that guide our research. And these are things that we're thinking about every day. So maybe just like roundtable across the room before we close, just one thing that you would take back, or one thing that you liked, disliked. Maybe this makes you hate comics even more. That's also fine. But just like one takeaway. Yeah, whoever wants to start.
So maybe I can start, because I like the last point that was brought up in the discussion about the humans. And the question is always in my mind, how can we humans back in the center of whatever we are doing? So I'm afraid that we're taking away lots of although somebody else is handling all the automation or the decision making and so on. But for me, the human-centric is something that should be very important. And this is something that we are missing from from this era where there is too much emphasis on AI, automation, and so on. So that's something, I mean, this is what I would like to bring up. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Who wants to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. I know I joined a little late because I didn't realize the sessions were running in parallel. I think the thing that I liked the most, or I took away the most, was I forget who mentioned it, but people coming in and viewing the images with different background knowledge. And I think this sort of really correlates back to something I've really found interesting, because you don't think about this, is when I took like an NLP class here at, I should say I'm at University of Pittsburgh, if you couldn't tell by all the like fake banners there. Some of the papers we read a lot were on ethics and thinking sort of outside the box, the problems you never considered. And one thing with like this background knowledge is just, as a developer, a lot of times you're thinking like, how do I make this work in my environment? How do I get this to work around me? And sort of having a nice discussion about like, okay, yeah, these classifiers or these models will work here, but if I go to Japan and I start feeding in, you know, these characters are letters, it's all going to break. It's going to have no way of working. So I think that's sort of a nice tie-in with the different background knowledges. It's very easy as a developer to sort of narrow in and think like, okay, this is the scenario, this is the situation, because that's what you're used to. But there's definitely a lot to be said for expanding your horizon and thinking outside of the, you know, what you're comfortable with, and keeping in mind that no, it's a general solution for all humans, not just specifically, you know, you as a developer where you're at. So I like that a lot.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
I would go. I think Vanna has covered me a lot on the points, and also Nixon as well, because this is what comes to my mind, and this is what I take from this workshop, is that we need to focus on the human aspect really that much in AI and in different areas as well, taking into consideration the humans, because you know, it's different, even the context that, or the history behind every person is what makes things that will make sense to him or not, actually.
Yep. Thank you, awesome.
So Paschalis and myself have remained to express opinion. Paschalis, do you want to go? No. So it's interesting again. Let me go back and share some thoughts. So I again, if you start thinking about this whole system, actually there is the human-computer interaction, and we said bias in, prejudice in, prejudice out, or how do you breach the whole thing? So again, there are two dimensions in this. The first is, of course, the computer, that it's our technology, but also we have to collaborate with the social scientists, whatever, to think about the human, because the human maybe is the root of the problem rather than the computer. That is an artifact of the human. So that is something that is always bother me or keep me thinking, because I am thinking about what does it mean, diversity and inclusion, equity, and how you treat everybody with respect. But again, there is some common ground that when you said, Brian, you know, you have to think how people think in Japan. Yes, you have to think about that in a context and with respect. But that does not mean that you have to violate some ground human rights that needs to be respected because of some culture or tradition or whatever that, and this is exactly why we have to work in tandem. So one improves the other, and all together, get together, go back to this tree with all of us contributing on a common understanding and so on. so that we can move always forward, because there is always this, in my maybe in my humble opinion, or wrong impression of respect, or everything should be treated equally. It's not everything is equally. There should be some ground axioms that you are starting as a common point to build this respect and inclusion and diversity.
And I think Pascal, thank you, Pan, and I think that Pascal just sent us an email saying that he cannot use his mic either, and Genoveva cannot use her mic. So is there anybody else who would like to share his thoughts?
So I will say one last thing. Falaah was absolutely great. You know, I believe that, you know, and when I was thinking these last thoughts, when I was saying I was more serious, and I was trying to find a humorous twist there, at least, because, you know, I didn't want to live with this very philosophical, serious tone. So, you know, maybe you can put back your the Einstein who is smiling, whatever. I used to have such hair, you know, this Afro style or whatever, but not anymore, unfortunately. But my curly hair changed to be more straight. But nonetheless, it was actually great, absolutely great. And thank you for sharing all this experience and with us. Actually, I always say that I like something when I come out and I say, I have learned something new today. And I have to say I did that today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys so much. It was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
So it was great. Thank you very much, Falaah. So we can use your illustrations. You said you sent us the link, right? So please feel free to use Falaah's a very nice idea of and the illustrations, and hopefully we'll meet again in next year's MDM to continue this interaction. And you said that one of your books has been translated in Greek.
Well, it's on. So we got a request for Greek, but it's not been produced yet. But yeah. There are many. So I put the link in the chat. You can check them out and feel free to like reach out to us if you want to make a translation. You can always use panels from the comic. Just cite the volume. That's all. As academics, we already know that. But yeah, that's yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely follow up and meet again.
Awesome.
All right. So let's, as a reminder, tomorrow we have our keynote talk for the D&I session, which is late at night, I think 8:45 local Cyprus time, but please double check with your local times. So we'll see you tomorrow. And also there is the tomorrow morning, the best D&I award will be presented based on the PhD presentation. So this will be announced in the morning, tomorrow morning. So please stay tuned for the award, for the session. So thank you very much all for attending. We'll see you back tomorrow. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye, Falaah.
Bye-bye, everyone.